The Minnesota Vikings finished the 2023 season with a 7-10 record and missed the playoffs for the third time in 4 years. There was a lot that transpired for the Vikings during the 2023 season, but one word that I think summarizes the year best is frustrating. This was a team that flashed at times throughout the year, like in a win over the 49ers on Monday night in which Kirk played at an MVP level without star receiver Justin Jefferson, and even the following week when Minnesota beat the Packers in Lambeau by double digits. But as we know, Kirk Cousins would go on to tear his Achilles, and that effectively ended the Viking season right there. They, of course, had the Josh Dobbs insanity run for 2 weeks after, in which the Vikings would improve to 6-4, before losing 6 of the final 7 games, with a lone win coming in a thrilling 3-0 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders. But the Vikings made a lot of big moves this offseason. Kirk Cousins is no longer the team's quarterback, and for the first time in franchise history, they selected a quarterback in the top 10 of the NFL draft. But even with the improvements the Vikings made to the defense, the Minnesota Vikings are in a tough situation, and we're going to break everything down in today's video. I think one thing we can all agree on is that summer so far at least has been hot. And hydration is key for, well, everyone. And Circle has helped make drinking water delicious, convenient, and fun. And I know not everyone is the biggest fan of drinking water, my grandma certainly isn't, but Circle helps with that as there are 0 calories, no sugar, and no artificial colors or flavors. Each sip cartridge can flavor the equivalent of 6 20-ounce fully flavored bottled beverages, and there are over 100 flavors to choose from at drinkcircle.com. My personal favorite is the Blue Magic, or Blue Raspberry, with a pretty famous TV character silhouette on the cover of the package, and on the side it says, "Just remember, you aren't in danger, you are the danger." One of my favorite parts about Circle is the drink adjustment dial, meaning if you want the full-fledged blue raspberry or the full-fledged black cherry, which is another flavor Circle sent me that I recommend, then you can get that. But if you want just a hint of a flavor like a black cherry or a strawberry watermelon, then you can turn the dial down to a 1 or 2 out of 10 and get that as well, while still staying hydrated. And you can get a free white stainless steel bottle and a flavor cartridge with any order of $35 or more at drinkcircle.com/footballanalysis. Once again, that's drinkcircle.com/footballanalysis, and a big thank you to Circle for sponsoring today's video. And we are starting today's video by breaking down the Minnesota Vikings departures in free agency, outside of Kirk Cousins of course, and the big loss was longtime Viking Danielle Hunter. Danielle had a career year for Minnesota last year as he had 23 tackles for a loss, which led the league by the way, as well as 16.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles. Now, as most of you probably know, I am a Vikings fan, and a few years after he retires, I would love for the team to induct Danielle into the team's Ring of Honor. But replacing Danielle is not an easy task, and the Vikings addressed this by bringing in multiple guys in free agency. And they did this by bringing in guys like Jonathan Gernard and Andrew Van Ginkel, who we will soon discuss. But aside from losing Danielle, they lost other guys like DJ Wonnum, Jordan Hicks, who I do believe will be a bigger loss than people realize, and other players like KJ Osborne, Marcus Davenport, Alexander Madison, and the man himself, Josh Dobbs. The breakup between the Vikings and Kirk Cousins had to happen at some point, and the only question was when. And GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and head coach Kevin O'Connell wanted to have their guy of the future, along with not wanting to commit as long-term to Kirk as long as Kirk would have liked, and the breakup happened. But pertaining to the Minnesota Vikings defense this year, this is a unit I am very much looking forward to seeing play for a few reasons. This was a unit that last year was very good at times, and I mean very good, but like we often talk about on the channel, complementary football is essential for team success, and there were times where the defense was hung out to dry. And I don't know if I've ever seen a team that routinely set their defense up for failure as much as the 2023 Vikings did early in the year. They had 12 turnovers in the first 5 games of the season, but what was frustrating about the turnovers offensively was they weren't the interceptions Josh Allen throws, where a lot of the time he's throwing an arm punt on 4th down and it's essentially a touchback. No, not even close. These were strip sacks that would put the opposing team in the red zone immediately, and at that point, if you are starting out a drive in the red zone as a defense, you are really hoping for a field goal in the best case scenario. And within the same concept of complementary football, the average opponent starting drive against the Vikings last year was at their own 30-yard line, which was 28th in the entire league. And 2 plays in the Eagles game summarizes how a lot of the Vikings season went. The Justin Jefferson fumble, which was a touchback and gave Philly the ball, and the immediate next drive in which Philly strip sacked Kirk and started their drive on the Vikings 7-yard line, which, not surprisingly, ended in a touchdown 2 plays later. Before the Jefferson fumble, it was a 10-7 game, and in a span of 2 minutes of actual game time, Philly was up 20-7 instead of it being a 10-10 game, or even a 14-10 game with the Vikings leading. And that is the only time in Jefferson's career that he fumbled the ball out of bounds that became a touchback. And as long as the Vikings do not commit 34 turnovers again this year, for an average of 2 per game, and routinely set the defense up in bad situations, they're going to be a much more competitive team by default. This was also in a year where the Vikings had a -12 turnover margin, and in a year where the Vikings had 11 multi-turnover games, and not surprisingly, they were just 2-9 in those games. And if you were wondering, the wins were over the Panthers and Falcons, who of course both finished with bottom 8 records in the entire league. So as long as Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy, if or when he takes over, simply hold on to the ball, and as long as Aaron Jones doesn't cough up the pigskin, the defense should be improved for a unit that already flashed in a big way last year. Aside from the Eagles game in Week 2, in which they ran for over 250 yards as a team, the Vikings' run defense was great throughout the year and actually finished 4th in yards per carry allowed. Teams didn't want to try and run the football against the Vikings aside from a game here or there, and they allowed 150 or more rushing yards just 3 times throughout the entire 2023 season, one of which was in a 23-point blowout loss to the Packers, in which they ran the ball 39 times. Now, I do worry about their secondary entering the 2024 season, because this is a unit that's going to have their work cut out for them, and this is where Brian Flores is going to have to be in his bag as a DC this year, because the NFC North became good and quick. Entering the 2023 season, the Bears were in a now or never situation with Justin Fields, and the Packers were a young team that was supposed to go through a growing phase with Jordan Love as their starter, which I guess they did, except it was for only about half a season, and the Lions were expected to step up, which they did. But I don't think people were expecting Jordan Love to finish second in the NFL in passing touchdowns and have an 18-1 TD to INT ratio in the final 8 games of the 2023 season, in which he also completed 70% of his passes. And the Bears just drafted the best quarterback prospect since Trevor Lawrence, and Caleb Williams is in the best situation a number 1 overall pick has ever been in. So this leaves the Vikings in an incredibly tough situation because the rest of the division became good and fast, and this is also with a team that's number 1 corner is Byron Murphy and their number 2 corner is Shaquille Griffin, who was released by the Texans in the middle of the 2023 season. After that, it's corners Mekhi Blackman, who had a solid rookie year, and Caleb Evans, who, just being honest, I don't think is a good NFL corner, and a player who is most known for being the guy who got mossed on the T. Higgins touchdown during the Bengals and Vikings game last year. After that, it's Andrew Booth, who was a second-round pick back in 2022 and has played just a little over 250 snaps since being drafted on a secondary that's been thin during his time in the NFL, and he is at best hopeful at this point, and certainly not someone that can consistently be relied on entering the year. And the reason why secondary is such an emphasis for the Vikings in 2024, aside from the obvious, is because of how much they blitz. They led the league in blitz percentage last year as they blitzed at a rate of 57%, and they led the league by a lot. The next closest team was the Giants at 44.2%, and this is big because guys have to be on the same page in the defense Brian Flores runs. I think Cam Bynum is one of the more underrated players in the entire NFL, and while Harrison Smith is not the player he was back in 2017, he's still better than what people think, and I expect that to be the same this year. And Swiss Army knife Josh Metellus is all over the field in every game, and that's also something I expect to continue this year too. For the concerns I have with the corners, I love the Vikings front seven. There were some comments throughout the 2023 season to do an underrated players video and to make sure to include then rookie Ivan Pace, and Ivan had a great rookie year for Minnesota as he had over 100 tackles and was all around a really good player. I don't think this was a one-year wonder by him, and I think he will be a great player for this team for a long time. I loved the Blake Cashman signing in free agency, and I loved the trio of pass rushers in Gernard, Van Ginkel, and of course, first-round pass rusher Dallas Turner. The Vikings defense is an underrated unit, and as long as they don't have a -12 turnover margin this year, and are put in prime positions even for the 2000 Ravens to fail, they should be a solid unit, and they are going to be key for the Vikings this year, because there are rightful concerns with the Vikings offense entering the 2024 season, specifically at the quarterback position. Now, the one big question mark heading into the Vikings season that I, nor you, nor even head coach Kevin O'Connell knows at this point in time is how long is Sam Darnold going to play? And the reason why I say Kevin O'Connell doesn't even know the answer to that is because what if Sam Darnold comes out and he has an electric start to the year? And what if Kevin O'Connell's initial plan is to have Sam play the first 7 or 8 games and then have JJ take over midway through the year? That plan could get derailed in a good way because Sam could maybe play the entire season. And what if he has a 26 or 27 touchdown season? I'm not saying that he's going to, but on the other end of this, Sam could have a terrible start and have 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in the first 4 or 5 games. And the reality is, again, at this point, nobody knows. But what you can expect from the Vikings in 2024 is for Justin Jefferson to continue to dominate. In the final 4 games of the 2023 season, in a game aside from the Raiders in which he left early due to a hospital ball of hospital balls thrown by Josh Dobbs, well, in the final 4 games, he had 30 receptions for 476 yards and 2 touchdowns, which would put him on pace for 128 receptions and over 2,000 yards for a full 17-game season. He had 2 games of 140 or more yards, both of which were against the Lions, and I don't think that's something that should differentiate in 2024. He showed that, well, not that he was a product of Kirk Cousins before, but even with Nick Mullins or Jaron Hall at quarterback, JJ still produced. So, shouldn't be a hot take. I still think the best receiver in football will produce this year. The one wild card I am eager to see is Jordan Addison, as he had over 900 yards and 10 touchdowns, which put him in the top 5 as a rookie in touchdowns last year, and I am eager to see how he continues into his sophomore season. The two big things that should really improve for the Vikings in 2024 compared to last year is I can't imagine they're going to turn the ball over as much as they did last year, which obviously hurt them, and well, they lost several games they should not have, due in large part to the turnovers, in which killed drives, and in turn, I don't think they're going to have 34 drives killed this year because of turnovers, which was how many turnovers they had last year. Not only that, but their run game last year was atrocious, and while I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be a prime Dalvin Cook, much less a prime Adrian Peterson, I think Aaron Jones can be a lot better than what the Vikings run game was for most of last year, and the Vikings finished in the bottom half of the league in a lot of categories. And there was a point where the Vikings pretty much just abandoned the run because outside of one really big game from Ty Chandler in Cincinnati, they had next to zero run game all year, and technically aside from the Josh Dobbs insanity run, which was 2 games where he kind of put the team on his back. So the Vikings offense that finished 22nd in points per game last year, I think it should improve even with the uncertainty at quarterback position. I don't know if it's going, I don't think it's going to go in the top 8 or 10 or anything like that, but with all of the weapons they have, with the offensive line, with the great play caller, and with a Pro Bowl tight end and TJ Hawkinson coming back, hopefully by week 4 or week 5, I think the Vikings points per game should really improve by default, whether Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy is the quarterback this year. The Vikings' rookie impact is tough to project, due in large part to a project or developmental quarterback taken at number 10 overall, and what has to be remembered is J.J. McCarthy is only 21 years old. He is not 24, and he did not show the rawness in his game last year at 23 going on 24, so he is naturally going to take some time to develop. And not only that, but this will also play into the schedule. To be completely honest, I hope JJ doesn't play till at least after the bye, because the Vikings schedule prior to the bye is incredibly tough. And they start out in New York, then come home to play the Texans, then have a combination of the Packers and the Jets in London, and that's a very tough stretch for any quarterback, let alone a 21-year-old rookie that's going to need some time to develop. So, personally, I hope JJ doesn't start till at least after the bye week, and I would imagine Kevin O'Connell's not going to willingly throw him out to the Wolves when there is at least a somewhat viable option in front of him in Sam Darnold, so I wouldn't expect all that much from JJ in year one. I would think at best he's probably going to play 7 or 8 games, but definitely not 15, definitely not 17 games. Dallas Turner is a player I am very, very excited for, as he's 6'2", 245 pounds, had a 40.5-inch vertical, and was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. There are not a lot of pass rushers like Dallas. He can win with power, he can win with agility, he is going to be a problem at the next level. And then when you combine him in a defense like with Brian Flores, and a guy that's going to be able to scheme him open on blitzes, I think Dallas is going to be a heavy favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think him, Laiatu Latu, and Jared Verse are my top 3 guys to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year at this moment. The Vikings also selected offensive tackle Walter Roos in the 6th round, and anytime you have a developmental tackle like that, especially with the added 17th game, I've said that in several team previews, but go for it. You need offensive and defensive line depth. They also selected kicker Will Reichert, and as we know, the Vikings have had a lot of kicking troubles over, well, their franchise history, so hopefully Will's the guy, but they took him in the 6th round. A lot of people said he was the best kicker in the draft, and hopefully he proves to be. They also selected 2 guys past the 200 mark, and if they make the roster and they have any sort of impact, great, but I would not expect that much out of them. The Minnesota Vikings also selected another player in the 4th round of the 2024 draft, which was Oregon corner Khyree Jackson. Khyree unfortunately passed away on July 6th, 2024, along with 2 of his former high school teammates in a car crash in PG County, Maryland. The other car that unfortunately struck Kyree's car was believed to have alcohol involved, and I don't really talk about real-life shit on the channel, but if you have enough money to go out and go to the bar on a weekend and spend 20, 30, 50, however many dollars at the bar, I think you have enough money to take an Uber home. And I really hope that as long as we do team previews, that whether it's 1 year, 5 years, however long, that this is the only time I have to make a part of a video like this. And this shit sucks. There's no other way around it. And one stupid decision has affected multiple families for the rest of their lives. And there's no, well, sorry. Just be better people. And my condolences go out to Khyree and the other 2 victims' families and everybody involved. And may Khyree Jackson and the other 2 victims rest in peace. The Minnesota Vikings record is going to be tough to project in 2024 for a few reasons. We, of course, do not know how long Sam Darnold is going to play, and I know I've said that a couple of times, but that really needs to be hit home, that we have no idea how long he's going to play. And the first 5 games in particular are brutal, whether it would be for a team led by Sam Darnold or a team led by Patrick Mahomes. They open up the year against the Giants at MetLife, which is a game against a very good defense, then come home to play the 49ers, who I would imagine are hungry, especially after a loss last year on Monday night, in which the Vikings beat them at US Bank Stadium. They then play the Texans, then go to Lambeau in Week 4, then play the Jets in London in Week 5 before a Week 6 bye. There is a non-zero chance that the Vikings start out 0-5. Do I think they're going to start 0-5? Personally, no, but it's an extremely tough start to the year, and it does get a little easier as the schedule goes on, but those first 5 games are going to be brutal, and that's kind of the big reason as to why I hope the Vikings don't thrust JJ into action immediately, because those 5 games are hell. Now, after the Week 6 bye, they play home against the Lions, then go to the Rams on Thursday night, then play the Colts and Jags and Titans, so it does get a little easier after the Week 7 bye, or the Week 6 bye rather, but I wouldn't expect this team to win 9 or 10 games or anything like that this year. What is also unfortunate and why the Vikings are in a tough situation this year is because the rest of the NFC North got good and fast. We all have heard about the Lions over the past few years and the buildup of the Lions, and we expected them to take the step last year, which they did, but the Packers getting as good as they did, as fast as they did, was unfortunate for Minnesota, and the Bears are, without a doubt, one of the most improved teams from 23 to 24 for a team that already won 7 games last year, so the Vikings pretty quickly were left behind, and this is a big reason why they need quarterback JJ McCarthy to pan out. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think they're going to go anywhere in 2024, and in fact I think they're going to be anywhere from a 6 to 8 win team, and if I had to guess, I think they would be more along the lines of a 6 or 7 win team. The 8 wins would have to have a couple of games really go their way, but I think the Vikings will be a much better team than what we saw down the stretch of the 2023 season. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 39% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Thank you to Circle for sponsoring today's video, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.